Welcome to the English Homemaker podcast, a podcast where we discuss all things home. A realistic but fresh view of homemaking from the suburbs of the south of England. I'm your host, Alissa Evelyn. Welcome to episode 26 of the English Homemaker. Hello everybody, how are you today? Welcome to the first episode of 2025. So I have a lot to share with you today. I hope it's going to be a brief episode though, having said that. I'm going to throw a bunch of thoughts at you, a bunch of updates, some happy news, some very sad news, and just catch up with you a little bit, actually. So the notes I've taken for today come from the notes section on my phone, which got sort of overwhelmed in the homemaker section, just of like little quotes, little bits, little thoughts, and it's those I want to share with you today. And I really hope they can be inspiring, encouraging, thought-provoking. Some of my favourite episodes I've ever done are just quite short episodes where I just encourage you that you're on the right path, that you're doing the right thing, that we're all in this together, and that also sometimes challenges you a little bit. So first up, I just want to say thank you so much to every single one of you listening for tuning into the podcast in 2024, for tuning in again today, for supporting me, encouraging me, and for just getting behind this podcast, behind the intention behind it, and just sharing it with friends, leaving reviews, leaving me comments, sending me DMs. All of the things that you do really just help me to make the podcast. I don't do this for any monetary gain. I do it simply because I feel alone sometimes as a homemaker, and I don't want you to feel that way. And if this podcast can go a little way to making you feel less alone in what you do and more encouraged in what you do, that you're taking the right course, then I've done a good job, even if it's a small, little tiny something. So one of the things that I want to share with you today is some very sad news, something I've been dealing with, and I want to share it on here, not because I want you to feel sad for me or sorry for me or anything, but just because it's life, and I know that a lot of you will have dealt with things like this in the past, are maybe dealing with things like this, and I want to be real. So for the last 4 years, my cousin had been battling cancer. She had found breast cancer in 2020, had been through all sorts of different types of treatments, every single type of treatment, I think, in the last 4 years, and it kind of came to a bit of a head. It had spread through her body into her brain. And most of December she was incredibly poorly and eventually died on December the 20th. She was younger than me. She was so beautiful. She was so gracious and strong and brave. The other part that makes this just different, I think, to me, there's a couple of factors that make it just press heavier in my heart, is that she was my only girl cousin. She was my only girl relative of our generation. I didn't have a sister. She was like a sister to me. We went on so many holidays together. We grew up together. We had water fights together, and just so many heartfelt shared moments. Just so many good times shared, and so much growing up done together, even though I think we were about 5 years apart. We were really close. And I'm so grateful for her wisdom. She was such a wise young lady. And I'm just so grateful for all the time that we got together. The other thing, and I don't know if this is going to sound narcissistic, selfish, whatever, but there's quite a lot of breast cancer on one side of my family. And to see one of the younger members of the family pass is incredibly scary. And I don't think that's something that we always talk about. I think if there's breast cancer in your family, that's something that you have to live with and deal with and process and work through, because it isn't just that she died of cancer. My aunties had cancer, my grandmother, my great aunt. The only person that I can think of that hasn't in that side of the family is my mum and me. And it just feels a bit like I'm a ticking time bomb. But also like I really need to get my stuff together and figure out life faster than everyone else or something. I know I don't. And that's one of the things I want to talk about today. But I think it's something people don't talk about a lot because it does sound a bit selfish. And I know it was her that was dealing with it, not me. But there is a part of me that has had to deal with that whole thing of, well, what if it's me next? I don't really feel that way. Like, I think also, like, if I did get a diagnosis, I'd be fine. I've lived a really, really good life. I don't really have many regrets. But I do want to figure it out. I want to feel a bit wiser than I do. And one of the things at the top of my list today that I want to share with you is that I think I've realized I just know nothing. I don't know anything. I know nothing. Yeah, I just think the more I know, the less I know, the more confused I get sometimes. And maybe that's a good place. Maybe the wiser people are the people that appreciate that, there's so many points of view and everyone really comes at things from a different angle that I can't possibly profess to know the answer to pretty much anything. Because I am not God, I am not a creator, I am not all-knowing. And the more I know, genuinely, the less I know. Anyway, that probably doesn't put you at ease for listening to the rest of this podcast, does it? So, shall we talk about the happy news? The happy news is I am pregnant with baby number 3. I guess through all of the last few years, there's going to be a big gap between my kids. This is not a surprise baby. It is very much a planned baby. I think I believed that I had a boy and a girl. Well done, you're done. Or everyone seems to have 2 babies, and I should be very grateful for the babies I've got and not feel like, I don't know, greedy, or maybe it's bad for the environment, or I don't know. There's a number of things I think I probably believed were true. And in my heart of hearts, I always wanted more children. Because I have type 1 diabetes, it's complicated to have another baby, but I'm a healthy type 1, so I can have another baby. It's actually been fine. Pregnancy for me is not too challenging. I get a little bit of nausea like most people in the first trimester, and I'm currently hitting about 30 weeks. I feel really good. I feel strong. I feel excited. And I know it's going to be tiring. I know all the things coming ahead, but we're just feeling very blessed and really excited that we're adding another beautiful little child to our family. There is so much more I could share with you, and I know a bunch of you will have questions, so please send me a DM on Instagram if you want to know more, you want to ask questions, anything, just please ask me over there, because I just think I don't want this podcast to become all about babies or parenting. I want it to stay about homemaking, but you guys need to know the context. You need to know where I'm coming from. So in the future, when I'm talking about homemaking, know that homemaking this year is going to look quite different for me. And I probably will make some episodes about homemaking with a baby, a bit of postpartum planning maybe. I don't know. Any thoughts you have, let me know. I'd love to share what you want to hear, obviously. So I've called this episode Time is Our Treasure, and I'm feeling like that's now really apparent why I've called it that. Time is just so precious, isn't it? We don't know if we've got an hour or a year or decades ahead of us. And sometimes I think as a human, that's quite difficult to wrestle with. Like, are you supposed to have a short-term mindset or a long-term mindset? Are you maybe supposed to have both? I know my husband and I differ on that one. I think he thinks he's definitely going to live to 102. And I'm like, oh, if I make it to 65, I'll be like, that'll be pretty good. So I don't know. It's funny. It's difficult. Are we supposed to just really enjoy the next year, the next 4 years? Are we supposed to be planning into retirement and spending, 40 years in retirement? How are we supposed to look at our lives and kind of plan that way? And I guess we can really only take the old adage, which is to take every single day as it comes, to be so grateful for the day that we have ahead of us, and to make wise decisions in that one day, to be really intentional with our time, which is quite a lot of what I talked about in my last episode, and just to also rest and enjoy the time, not to be like manic, like, oh, well, if it's today and I've only got today, then I've got so much I need to do. And actually, no. One of the things I wrote down was resting and enjoying the moments of peace and calm instead of taking it as an opportunity to get a little job done. One of the things I keep banging on about in this podcast is productivity. I think there's going to be a lot of other homemaker podcasts out there that are talking about productivity, about organization and just being as productive as you can and fitting as much as you can in the day. And oh my goodness, how are we going to fit everything in? And I think I just want to speak the opposite message in a lot of ways, because life isn't about like how much you get done that day. So the way that I used to run my homemaking was to write lists. I love lists, lots and lots and lots of lists. Lists on my phone, lists on pieces of paper, lists on scrap paper, lists on actual like list writing notepad paper. Lots and lots of lists. Now, the problem with lists is it sort of creates this kind of like manic pressure to fulfill the list. And if you don't complete the list, then you're a failure. It's quite a kind of masculine, modern way of working. And I think I've kind of moved towards a more intuitive, kind of ebb and flow, feminine kind of way of doing things. That might sound a little woo-woo, but bear with me. So I do keep a couple of lists, but there's no pressure, there's no time pressure on these lists. If I do have something that has got a time pressure to it, say I need to get something to someone at a particular time, or I need to send something in the post at a particular time, I put it in my phone diary for that day and I just do it. And there's usually about 1, maybe 2 things in a day, maybe. So now the way that I work most of the time is to work out what my top priorities are around the house and in my homemaking. My top priority is to make sure everyone is fed and clean and just well taken care of in their soul. Like I've spent good time with them. Those are my top priorities. That includes myself, my husband, and my children. The problem with a kind of more structured, routine-y, schedule-y, list making, ticking the box kind of functioning in my home for me was just that I think I'd outgrown the season of needing that, probably. Number one, I think there are seasons where we really need that, especially with young children. It does help keep you sane if there is a bit more structure to it. Sometimes, not for all people. Probably should say that. There is so much nuance to this. And then secondly, you miss the most important part of homemaking, which is the people in that home. If you're so focused on making sure everything's clean and ticking everything off the list, there are sort of people swimming around you, but you're so focused on your list that you miss the people that are there, including yourself. So for me, most days now, I will come home and instead of writing a list, I will just sit and I will think, what is the next thing I need to do to make sure that the people I love in this home are cared for today? And sometimes that also includes me doing a little bit of a kind of a body check, a brain scan, working out what I'm going to need that day so I can function well when I see all my family later in the day. And just really intuiting what it is next that I need. Knowing also that life keeps throwing things at you, so you always need a little bit left over in the tanks as well. And if I'm running a little bit low, how can I top that up? Now, if we take this to a kind of spiritual level for a moment, and bear with me, I think all the list writing and distractions, I could write lists for days. With homemaking, there is an endless number of things you could do, like endless. You can clean your house all day. You could cook all day. You could declutter all day, and it would just never, ever stop. There has to be a point where you stop, because for me, one of the saddest things I've realized over the last few years that I think what I'd done is basically drowned out my intuition. I drowned out the sound of that still small voice. I drowned out the call to creativity or to service. I'd not been able to hear what was needed, not just from my family, but from my extended community, my extended family. I am still working, I think, on getting that back. We need, as homemakers, we need to be listening, to be creating moments of quiet so we can hear what truly needs to get done. Time is our treasure. And if we are to treat it like that, then every moment counts. Not in a way that's stressful, that needs to make sure we fill it like crazy, or we need to be overly perfect or overly loving, or I don't know, just too much. But we need to create the space, we need to listen, we need to hear, we need to know what it is next we actually need to do, and to be in tune with that rhythm, that ebb and flow of life. That listening to the still small voice is a joyous wonderful thing. And in the last few weeks and months, I've actually been able to hear it again and work with it and flow with it. And it is such a better way of working than lists and routines. Now, I want a little caveat in there, maybe two. One is that if you came and saw my life, you'd probably think it was routined and structured, because mostly the same things happen every single day. It's not often that I get, outside of doing a load of laundry and emptying and reloading the dishwasher and cooking everybody breakfast and dinner, and it kind of is always going to look sort of the same. So maybe you would think there was a routine or structure. And secondly, I think if you're at the beginning of homemaking or you're in a challenging season, as I mentioned, having lists and structures can really help until you kind of intake what it is that you need to do. But at a certain point, you do need to drop them, I think. Maybe not everybody. I mean, there are different personality types. But my point in all of this is, don't miss out on a greater call in your life as a homemaker. If you have the time to be of service to other people, if you have the time to do something creative, and you feel called to do those things, then it's absolutely worth shoving your list aside to do them, because we are creative human beings and we are people that are meant to be in a community. And it's so easy as a homemaker to isolate yourself and just feel so overwhelmed with all of the to-dos and the cleaning and everything. So, right. My next point that I've written in giant bold letters is choose life. Choose to shine over the darkness. Now, this is something I feel so passionate about. One of my nicknames growing up was Shine, and Mum still calls me Shine to this day. I just think there's so much negativity in this world, guys. It's just so much, whether it's the news, which I haven't paid attention to now for years and years and years, and I couldn't recommend more not bothering about the news. My husband has to tell me if there's something major that happens in the world. So I always know if something is happening anyway. But I don't know the detail. I haven't read the context. I haven't read the abundantly fearful and scaremongering article that comes with that news story. Whether it's you spend so much time on social media, you are constantly comparing yourself to people in their best moments and you just feel so much less than. Whether it's you watch so much TV that's just full of negative, moaning comments, well, no matter what it is, or you just live in England and you're surrounded by people that are moaning because it's the middle of winter, choosing, and it has got to be a choice, choosing to shine over that darkness is sometimes the hardest thing to do, but it's also the best. I have been critiqued a lot, actually, in my life for being overly positive, outrageously positive, when it seems like I shouldn't be. I guess I just am that kind of a person, but I'm so happy to be that person. I never want to be swallowed up by the fear and just the negativity and the moaning that happens, especially in England. And I must admit to spending a couple of years there of my life really getting carried away with the negativity, with the moaning, with feeling like I needed to be that person, with that sort of goes hand in hand with motherhood. Like, we spend a long time moaning about our kids and how they never sleep and how I'm not rested enough. And I don't know, all of the kind of things that we say. I think there's so many of them that just need remaking. There's so many attitudes that we have in our everyday when it comes to homemaking. Oh, there's so many things to do. Oh, my house is never clean enough. Oh, I never get through all the laundry. That are just this way that we've got into talking that I just love to readdress. I'd love to actually do an entire episode that was all about the things that we say without really thinking, that we just sort of is a thing that we say. That actually, do we mean it? Do we just need to redo that? Do we need to be the person that says, actually, no, like I'm not going to go along with that behavior, that way that we talk on the playground, that way that we talk in the doctor's surgery. I'm going to change it. I'm going to be the person that does it differently. So I'm sorry to everyone that knows me in real life. I'm going to continue to be that an annoying, positive person who finds the good in everything, because it's just who I am. And I'm not ashamed of that. I am so proud to be that person, even if it is super irritating sometimes. So the next thing I wrote down is do things with your whole heart. This has been the biggest lesson I learned in 2024. I think I worked out that I was using just part of my heart because I was terrified that if I used all of it, it would get broken. And I guess I just didn't feel like I could take that. So I was just doing things kind of half-heartedly and not putting myself into all of them. And that includes homemaking, parenting, marriage, you name it. I think once you've had your heart broken by something in the past, you are so much more careful with how you expend it going forwards. And I think I also believe this lie, and I've definitely mentioned this in podcasts prior to this one, that I had these limits to myself, that I needed to be careful with my energy and my emotions, and that I'm this sort of scary, fragile thing that could break. And that's not true. I am strong. I am capable. If you're doing things always half-heartedly, you're actually kind of doing things out of fear as well. And you're not doing them well. And you're not doing them in the right way that they need to be done because you can't hear really what it is or feel what it is you really need to do. You're kind of just doing it because it's this tick box thing, but you're not doing it. You're not putting your whole self into something. So this is the year where I do things with my entire heart, and I'm not scared of it breaking because I know I am strong. Oh, gosh, that feels good to say it out loud. So the next thing I realized in 2024 was that contentment and gratitude are the same thing. I think this was Sally Clarkson that did a kind of, I don't know whether she did a podcast episode about that or where I heard it, but I'm pretty sure it's Sally Clarkson, talked about contentment and gratitude being the same thing. And thereby, if gratitude is a practice that we can just increase and practice, that we can increase our level of contentment. And I have definitely noticed this to be true in my life. There's a huge correlation between times where I forget to practice gratitude and then when I'm discontent. I see that hugely in my children. And the more I practice gratitude with them over meals at the end of the day, the more content they are in their life, the more satisfied they are, the happier they are. I do think it's probably one of the hardest things about homemaking for me is just I get caught between this feeling like I have to be content where I am, but also feeling like things need to change. I think that's also a bit of human nature in there, as well as it being 2025. We're surrounded by these ideas and different ways of being that we could be. You know, we could be the person that lives in Hawaii with multiple children. We could be the person that lives in the city apartment with this amazing career. We could do these things. And I think knowing there's so many lives that are being lived can make it quite difficult to see the one that you have in the context that it is, which is why we can all feel really discontent sometimes. But there's always something to be grateful for. And whether you need to start that gratitude journal and sit down and just start listing the things you have to be grateful for, you will find so many, whether that is simply just clean water. I mean, sometimes just having a huge perspective shift like that is a big deal. Whether that's, enough money to buy the food that you want, whether that's the children that you have, the health that you have, whether that's parents that can come look after your children for you, whether that's a good school, whether that is any school for your kids. There are so many things that we overlook on the day-to-day that we needn't. Anyhow, I think there's a couple of funny things about this. One, that some of you will be thinking, oh, she's such a goody two-shoes, oh, she's so holy, or I don't know, something like that. I promise you that I'm just a human, and it requires a lot of work to stop me from feeling discontent, even though I have so many things I have to be grateful for. And it requires my children, my husband, my external family to kick me in the butt and tell me the things I have sometimes, because it's very, very human. But I tell you what, I want to shock the system. the system requires that we are all discontent and unhappy because it's so much easier to sell us things that way. And a happy, contented woman is a terrifying thing to the modern world. But I want to be that. Don't you? I don't want to be caught up in a mindset where I think I don't have enough stuff, like I'm not a fully rounded person without X. I want to have a mindset of joyful abundance where I just feel overwhelmingly full with the things that I have around me. And I know that's a practice, and I'm going to practice the practice. And I'd love for you to join me in that. I think, wouldn't we be a force to be reckoned with? So the last thing that I have is a quote, and it is one that I have had in mind for a very long time, and it will be familiar to a lot of you. And that is, courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the judgment that something else is more important than fear. The brave may not live forever, but the cautious do not live at all. I think this echoes a lot of the things that I've already said. And if you didn't get the quote, FYI, that's from The Princess Diaries. And it's the letter to Mia from her dad for her 16th birthday. I think there is so much to that. And I think I've lived so much in fear. I think that is the way that the world wants to keep you because, like I said, they make more money out of you that way. They can keep you distracted and they can keep you from being the powerful, amazing person that you are meant to be. But yes, to choose, and I again, this is something I want for my children. I don't want them to walk out into the world being afraid of things. I want them to be brave, and they are. They are so brave, both of my children. And we have to teach them to see the fear and to rise above the fear, to say there's something more important than that, and to not live making decisions based that way because, like it says, the brave may not live forever, but the cautious do not live at all. I don't want to be a person that's just sort of sat at the end of my life feeling like I haven't really lived. I haven't really done things that scared me because it's the only way we move forward. It's the only way we grow as people. And we'll almost certainly mess up and we'll probably lose friends and we'll probably have to change our lives and we'll probably have to change ourselves and we'll probably have to face things about ourselves that we don't like, that we need to change. And it'll be hard, but it's the only way of really living. So I'm going to end there. Those are my kind of reflections on last year and things I'm bringing into 2025, things I've learned that I want to remember. In so many ways, this podcast is me talking to myself, reminding myself of things that I know to be true and just kind of talking things out sometimes as well. Anyhow, I hope that was helpful, encouraging, inspiring, interesting, at least to see an insight into someone else's brain and feel slightly less alone in some of the things you're thinking. So thank you so much for joining me today, for listening to the whole episode, for getting to the end, for just being there. I wish I could give every single one of you a huge hug and tell you that I think you're amazing and that what you're doing is so important, valid, and worthwhile. Have a fabulous, fabulous rest of your day and week, and I'm thinking of you all. Bye.